Alexander the Great was born in 356 BCE in the capital of Macedon. Even in youth, his presence was striking. Lean, muscular, with piercing eyes and a gaze that carried command. Ancient writers claimed he seemed touched by the gods, destined for greatness. When he took the throne at only 20, he already carried himself as more than mortal, as a man meant to rule the world. From the moment he wore the crown, Alexander wasted no time. He crushed revolts in Greece, razed cities, and led his men across the Hellespont into Asia. At the Granicus, at Issus, at Gaugamela, he shattered armies many times his own size, striking with speed and brilliance. Each victory was not only military, but destiny itself unfolding before his men's eyes. By 331 BCE, Babylon fell before him, and the mighty Persian Empire, the greatest power of its age, crumbled. Its king fled, while Alexander claimed the treasures of Asia. But his ambition was endless. He marched over mountains, through deserts, and into India itself. Cities bore his name, kings bent the knee, and his empire stretched from the Nile to the edge of the known world. Yet, in May of 323 BCE, the tide shifted. At a banquet in Babylon, after years of enduring battles and wounds, Alexander suddenly fell ill. What began as a pain in his stomach grew into a fever that gripped him with merciless strength. The unstoppable conqueror, who had crossed the world, was suddenly helpless in his chamber. The heat of Babylon turned his chamber into a suffocating prison. Sweat drenched his body, the air thick with fever, stale wine, and damp linens. His physicians tried everything they knew, cooling baths, crushed herbs, even prayers and incantations. Nothing worked. The man who once marched across continents could now barely lift his head. One last time, Alexander ordered himself carried before his army. The soldiers who had followed him through deserts and rivers now stood in silence, filing past their king. Many wept openly, others bowed their heads in grief. Their living god was fading before their eyes. It was as if the empire itself held its breath. As his body weakened, his generals gathered in whispers. Some came with true concern, others only to be seen at his side, measuring their own chances in the storm that would follow. The empire stretched from Egypt to India, but now it rested on the rise and fall of one man's breath. Some scholars believe he suffered from typhoid, others malaria, still others say poison. But one haunting theory suggests Guillain-Barré syndrome, leaving his mind sharp while his body lay paralyzed. If true, Alexander may have endured his last hours fully conscious, trapped within flesh that refused to move, hearing every whisper of those already dividing his empire. By early June, Alexander could no longer speak. Some say he gave his signet ring to his general Perdiccas. Others claimed his final words were, "To the strongest." Perhaps he said nothing at all. Yet these fragments of his last breath would echo for centuries, sparking wars that tore his empire apart. On June 10 or 11, 323 BCE, Alexander the Great breathed his last at only 32 years old. But even death did not bring peace. His body, it is said, showed no decay for days in the sweltering Babylonian heat. To his soldiers, this was proof of divinity. To modern scholars, it raises haunting questions about whether he was truly gone when they declared him dead. The embalmers were summoned, filling the chamber with resin, myrrh, and ritual prayers. This was not merely a king, but a god to many, and his body had to be preserved in perfection. Guards watched at all times, for possession of his corpse meant possession of his legacy. For 2 years, his body lay in Babylon while a monumental golden funeral carriage was built, a moving shrine that declared Alexander was more than mortal. When it finally began its journey, generals already plotted. For whoever controlled the king's body, controlled the myth of Alexander. But when the procession reached Syria, Ptolemy of Egypt seized his chance. He stole the body, diverted it to Memphis, and made it the heart of his claim to rule. Possessing Alexander's corpse gave him a power no army could match, the aura of legitimacy. Wars erupted, and blood was spilled, all because of a body more valuable than gold. Ptolemy later placed Alexander in a grand mausoleum in Alexandria, where he was worshipped as founder and protector. For centuries, rulers and even Roman emperors came to gaze upon his body. Yet by the 4th century CE, the tomb vanished from history. Whether destroyed, plundered, or still hidden beneath the streets of modern Alexandria, no one knows. Thus ended the story of Alexander the Great, not with a roar of battle, but with the silent collapse of his mortal frame. The man who remade the world died helpless, perhaps even aware but unable to speak, while others fought for his crown. His empire fractured, but his legend endured, carried by memory, myth, and mystery. And so, as you drift into sleep, remember, even the greatest conqueror must one day surrender. Good night.